And the total knowing that came to me was everything you want to know about how to behave and how to have a life is inside. And all you need to do is sit down and go inside, and you will find it. In high school, when I was in my senior year, I was 15 and a half years old, I got drunk for the first time. And that was the first time that I really ever altered my consciousness in a significant way. It was fun, but it was also very educational because I taught myself that although it was a great deal of fun, it was something I never wanted to do again because I could tell that the substance was toxic, particularly since I regurgitated. Fast forward then, I'm in graduate school. I read about Leary and Alpert at Harvard, and I read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and in the back of the Tibetan Book of the Dead that they wrote, there is a prescription, or a recipe, if you will, that if you take a substantial number of heavenly blue or pearly gates morning glory seeds, you will have a full LSD experience. So I quickly went around town and bought up all the heavenly blue and pearly gates morning glory seeds that the town had with my friend Alain Pansens and our ladies who served as guides. We dutifully ingested 400 morning glory seeds each. We counted them out. It was very hard to get that many seeds down, I will tell you. And what happened was a life changer. I was catapulted back to the pyramids, and I watched the pyramids being built. And I can see it now, Corey, as if it happened yesterday. And then I was catapulted back further and further in time. And I saw myself not quite as a caveman, but something close to it, some kind of a prehistoric being. I then had a sudden recognition that everything that's happened from that time until now has been recorded in the DNA of everybody on the planet. It was like a total knowing. And the total knowing that came to me was everything you want to know about how to behave and how to be and how to have a life is inside. And all you need to do is sit down and go inside, and you will find it. And that was a remarkable shift. We are trained so often to look for answers outside of ourselves, to look to education, or to look to religion, or to look to something out there. And this was a dramatic educational experience to look in. And that stayed with me for the rest of my life and has stood me in good stead. The other thing that happened that was quite remarkable from that experience was after I left the cave, came back to the pyramids, came down through history very quickly, very, very quickly through history, I then had a picture of our planet. And this is all going on in my mind. I'm laying flat on my back for this whole experience with the morning glory seeds, hardly moving. I have the experience of seeing the planet and picturing billions of little specks on the planet, which I come to recognize are human beings. And I see them in this vision interconnected via what looks like an electromagnetic hairnet. And the sense that comes to me is that we are all connected. We are all one. And furthermore, I come to the realization, or it felt like a realization, that we're not really human beings on this ball. We are part of the ball. That the ball and us and everything on it are one living, breathing organism. And that was a remarkable experience, which has also to this very day stayed with me. I can actually picture that ball with the hairnet right now as I'm speaking. So these were the two profound takeaways. I never looked at human beings in the same way again after that experience. My life changed dramatically. The other thing that happened, which is important to note, is I'm there again on my back, eyes closed, and I start to get really scared. And I'm really scared, and I hear this banging, and I get afraid that we've done something illegal, and somehow the authorities have found out about it, and they're banging down the door, and something bad is going to happen to us. And I'm like laying there, and I'm scared, and I'm shivering, and I'm not sure what to do. I think, I'll open up my eyes. If they're coming in, I better face them. And I open up my eyes, and I look out the window, and there are two men there, telephone linemen, and they really are banging on the wall, but what they're doing is hammering in some wire. And so that was my third realization, which is that under the influence of this substance, one can make inferences that really need to be checked out, because if you keep your eyes closed and go by what your mind is telling you in relation to the sounds or voices, you might go off on what is now called a bad trip. And that could have been a really bad trip if I would have stayed there with my eyes closed. But fortunately, I opened them up. Oh, I forgot one other thing. There was one other thing that came out of that first experience that I didn't mention. And that is, those of us who are here are the lucky ones. We don't know how many Google, meaning the biggest number possible, which is a Google, we don't know how many Google sperm and how many Google eggs never got united, never became a human being, and went off into nothingness. But we who are here are the fortunate ones whose sperm united with an egg and gave us life. And so the gratitude, this overwhelming sense of gratitude that I felt, was a gratitude of the gift of being here. That enables me to get through some of life's challenges, no matter what I'm dealt, because I've got life. I'm at the table. I'm playing. So that's sort of a thumbnail sketch of my very first psychedelic experience. I spent part of my childhood, fortunately, in a swamp in Florida, which gave me a very close connection to nature. But after the war, we came back to New York City, to Manhattan. So I say I went from living in the swamp of Florida to the jungles of Manhattan, because Manhattan was pretty jungly at that time. And in order to survive in the jungles of Manhattan going to school, one had to put on a pretty thick skin and also be careful. And one of the things that happened from that psychedelic experience that I described, where I realized my connection to everybody, is that a lot of the rough edges in my character got sandpapered off. I felt much more comfortable with other human beings. Instead of seeing them as potential fighters that are going to attack me because they're fighting over some street, the combination of these remarkable events was breathtaking. At the time, the graduate program that I was in offered me, without fee, both group and individual therapy. So I brought the experience to my group therapy, and I brought the experience to my private personal therapist. And we didn't use the word integration, but it was simply me telling about my experience and mining it for many nuggets as we possibly could mine it for. We did a great deal of integration. And what I tell people all the time, many people already know, is that we have an unusual situation with psychedelics in that the very same substance, the same molecules, can be used recreationally. They can also be used medicinally. They can also be used creatively. And the difference is not in the substance. The difference is in the protocol. In the 60s, it was mostly recreational use. But I'm a psychologist, so I'm interested. I wasn't interested in, not that I don't like to have fun and games, but I knew as soon as I took this stuff that it would never be something I'd ever take in public. That's my taste. It would never be something I'd ever go to a rock show in. Not that I go to them, actually, too many people, but it wouldn't be something I'd go out on the street. I mean, I knew from that very first experience that this is an experience that you do in a very safe place. I learned from the telephone lineman, you do it in a place where nobody will ever be coming in and bothering you, that it's tremendously safe. It's now referred to as setting. You sure don't want cars, jackhammers, or sirens or things like that going on. I recognize that immediately. No phones, no computers, no outside sounds. The quietest place possible, because we are so affected, I was affected by the banging of the telephone lineman. We are so susceptible and vulnerable to outside influences when we take these substances that I want absolute quiet and neutrality so that what I get is a look at the inner workings of my consciousness and not being impacted upon by something in the outside world. That was a very, very big lesson.